Hey, Bodacious Beast, welcome back to my channel. My name is Scottyallenday. Hey, have you ever wondered why homeless people don't take advantage of homeless shelters? Is it the drugs? Is it the booze? Is it the rules? Is it the curfew? Nah, it's gotta be separation from pets or spouse, right? Well, keep on watching and I will give you just about all the answers, or maybe just a general idea of what's going on. So most homeless shelters on the East Coast and down south that I've stayed at, I stayed at one up here in the Northwest too back in the 80s. Now you have really good shelters and you have really bad shelters. And let me get to the bad shelters first, and then we'll get to the good shelters, and we'll kind of get it all summed up so you have a general idea of why. Actually, there's 3 different types of shelters. So the bad shelters first, they run on an extremely low budget. So in other words, whatever they use for a protein is probably got to be the most god-awful thing that you could ever eat in your life. And when I was down there in Nashville, Tennessee, it was liver and onions for breakfast, liver and onions for dinner. That was it. 7 days a week, liver and onions. That was the food. Anything else? No. Liver, onions, and water. Once in a blue moon, if they felt generous, then it would be sausage with biscuits and gravy. But it wasn't sausage. It was ground up liver. So, basically, liver was the staple. It was the protein. It was enough to be able to keep people alive. Plain and simple. They said, well, if the food is bad, then that shouldn't be too bad, right? Wrong. Well, they had beds. There was no check-in at all. You showed up until the shelter was full, and after the shelter was full, they'd shut the door. That was it. Lights out when they felt like it. Now, anybody and their mother could go in there. This was basically what you called a wet shelter. A wet shelter, they didn't care if you smoked cigarettes in there. They didn't care if you smoked weed, shot dope, whatever. They just wanted you as a number because they were getting money from the city. This was actually a union rescue mission. There were no showers in the place. There was basically no bathrooms in the place except for down by where the staff was. This building was an old firehouse, and it had 3 levels. It was an old firehouse, so basically the staff got the bathroom and the kitchen quarters, and everybody else slept in bunk beds. Now these bunk beds were extremely poor. They were really bad, because if you slept on the top bunk and you were heavy, it'd be just like you see in a big bow right down below you. And you have a skinny guy below you, he could go like this. And the bunks are like 3.5 feet into the air, and he could go like this right on the top of his chest. And this was where this other guy was. He had a couple of them that broke, and well, the guy underneath got injured, but that's beside the point. They had buckets with bleach in them. That's where you urinated and defecated in. That was it. That was that homeless shelter. There was no safe place for you to be able to store your belongings. I guarantee you at least every day about 5 to 10 people would have their shoes stolen. Every day at least 2 or 3 people would have all their belongings stolen. Nobody cared. The homeless shelters. Nobody cared. So that was pretty much it. That's pretty much bare bones. There was another wet shelter that I stayed at before. It was a city-sponsored one, and it was yoga mats on the floor, and you had a bed sheet for a blanket, and you had to provide your own pillow, which in most cases people used their own bags. You slept on the floor, You smelled feet. Again, you urinated and defecated in buckets. And that was the shelter. Their meals were in the morning, you'd get used Dunkin' Donuts. And Dunkin' Donuts would donate a huge garbage bag full. And most of the time it would be about 2 or 3 days old. It was nasty. You could have donuts or bagels for breakfast, and then in the afternoon, 99% of the time it was macaroni and cheese. Or a cheese sandwich. That was it. That was these two shelters. They went bottom of the barrel, bare bones, minimum, the least that they could be able to spend because they wanted bodies. And we called these body count shelters. Now, I've stayed in 2 other really, really good shelters. I've stayed in multiple good shelters. The rescue mission has some extraordinarily good shelters. And I'm going to try and sum up all these shelters in general. So, but I want to talk about another one first before I get to this one. Now, this other one is called a night center. They have a night center and then they have day shelters. A night center, if they want to get in from out of the elements, it's too cold, they're thinking about getting sheltered, they maybe need somebody to talk to, they might need to see like a triage nurse. A vet shelter, it's kind of like if you walked into a old church building. There's a bunch of pews. That's what you'd sleep on. There would be staff on hand. You'd be able to talk to them. If you need to see a nurse, you could see a nurse. And some of the times they had showers. But all it was a place to lay your head. It was a safe spot. And they accepted both men and women. It was a place to go. They didn't have any meals. They had full bathrooms. But, that was a place to go. Now you have the better shelters, which I'm going to include the day centers. We're going to start off with the day centers, and then we're going to go off with the regular shelters, and then I'm going to answer pretty much the big kahuna of the questions. So, you have your day shelter, which you go into the day shelter. A good day shelter, you have your breakfast and your lunch, and then they shut down the kitchen. It's a place where you can receive mail. Once the main shelter opens, you go upstairs and get yourself a laundry ticket and you get laundry done. If you're trying to clean your life up, they have legal aid up there. In most of these, I'm just talking about the shelter, the day center that I know of, that helped a lot of people. Others are on one floor, others are across the street, stuff like that. So they had legal aid. Legal aid would go through and they would pull to see if you have any warrants. And then they would work back and forth with the city and the county DA. And they would try and get you a clean slate. Up in Boston, Mayor Menino, which I don't think is with us anymore, wanted to give a second chance for people who wanted to start over. So if you had a record and everything was old and stuff needed to be sealed and you did time served and you had bench probation and you wanted to try and get restarted, go up and you see legal aid. Legal aid would work really hard and try and get everything straightened up. If you had creditors or debtors, credit card companies after you, they would get them to stop. They would get things negotiated, and then you can get on with your life. They had a barber that came up there 4 days a week. They had a dentist that came up every day. And the last but not least, they also had a triage nurse, and they had showers. Now, the people that ran the place, I'll tell you in a minute. I'll get to the better shelters. The better shelters that I've stayed at, like the rescue mission, you have to attend a service, and then you go and you check in, and then you go inside. All your belongings get locked into a locker, They had house pajamas. You get into house, you go in, you take a shower, you get into house pajamas, and then you're in for the night. There's a big balcony, you can smoke your cigarettes and that sort of thing. That's back when smoking was still smoking. And basically, that was it. I mean, the only thing that was bad about this particular shelter, is athlete's foot. That's usually with a little bit of fungal powder. But you had access to medical. They had a TV lounge. You could be sociable, that sort of thing. Other shelters that I've been at was the same way. You were required to take a shower at night. And then you, if you stayed there long enough, you could be able to have a foot locker. And you could store all your belongings in the foot locker. After that, it was good. You were golden. There's a TV lounge. They normally had a social lounge in the TV lounge. Social lounge, people were going in and play spades and cribbage and poker and that's and do drawings and socialize. And the other half of the where they sat down and ate, they normally had movies every night. We normally had about the equivalent of Meals on Wheels for dinner service. Now, one of the big shelters that they had a program that went through the restaurants. The restaurants would bring people in to train people who are willing to learn how to cook, and basically their classes would fuel the Meals on Wheels program, and then also they would provide the food for the homeless shelters. So we normally had like Salisbury steak and mashed potatoes, or we would have mashed potatoes and gravy and corn and that sort of thing. It was decent. It was decent food. And then in the morning, you would basically have any kind of normal breakfast cereal, milk and orange juice, and that was it. And if you worked, you could fill out a form, and they'll make you a sack lunch for when you go to work. Again, they had a triage nurse there, so they'd be able to help take care of you. If you had an illness, they could be able to get you nursed back to health. Again, you had bunk beds. And that was pretty much the whole layout of these shelters. They also had a program there that if you were working, if one member was working, or they put an application in and saying they're trying to start over, they just got their record cleaned, they're trying to get going, and so most of these shelters had a program where you put in, I think it was like 20 hours in a week of volunteer service. So basically, it's either when they got up in the morning, they'd mop the floors, they'd clean the windows, they'd clean up after breakfast, they'd help out with dinner service, they'd clean the showers, that sort of thing. So that's pretty much how they ended up with their cleaning services. Just was the people that were staying in the shelters and the people that were in the specialized programs, which they basically called turnkey, and they would stay there for about 6 to 8 months, and basically they'll be able to save up money, and then as a way to shelter saying thanks, the shelter would help give them their security deposit in their last month. So basically when they walked into an apartment, they handed them their first month, and then there was a check for the security in the last month. Pretty much that's the whole way it was done. Now, if you look at it this way, with 6 months at 20 hours a week, that's, let's see, 16 and 24, about 244 hours or so. I don't know. About 244 hours. And if they're putting about a $500 deposit down, then they're only paying them $2 an hour. So, plus they got to stay up there in the special rooms in the shelter. So that answers pretty much everything that I've known with the normal homeless shelters. And then the staff were all had to have some kind of counseling or psychology degree to be a staff member at that shelter. I remember Walter. Walter was the main coordinator at the shelter, and he worked an 8-hour day, 5 days a week. And then there was Sam. Sam worked only 5 days a week at about 3.5 hours a day. And then there was a gal that worked there. She was an older mom. Everybody basically treated her as a mom. Anne. And I mean, she was a sweetheart, and she had such a personality that anybody could go and talk to her about anything. They even had 2 police officers up there. The 2 officers would walk in and play a game of spades with you. If you needed anybody to talk to anybody, they were there. And that's pretty much how Menino wanted it, was to give you a safe space. If you come in intoxicated, you're going to sleep on a cot. If you're going to work late, you can call and they'll save your bed for you. And it was a safe space to lay your head. It was a safe space to keep your belongings so you could try and get started over and go. Now, it worked because of the fact is people went in, they worked, they saved up their money, they gained friendships. I gained a friend there. And me and my buddy moved out of the shelter, and we got a place together. And until the day he passed on, we were best friends. He was one of my best men at my wedding, and you know, I still think about him a lot. We learned a lot from each other. He was a full-blown alcoholic. He was an alcoholic all the way until the day he passed on. But he's still one heck of a good friend. So I'm going to go back to the questions. I mean, I don't understand why they don't take advantage of it. These are chronically homeless. Sometimes it's a mental problem that they have, that or trust issues, or they're running and hiding from somebody, or there's numerous reasons why people will not go into shelters. There's a lot of them that are freeloaders that think that, well, if they go into a shelter, they're going to have to go and get a job. But it really doesn't work that way. As far as pets, well, that's difficult now. And as far as spouse, there's a lot of programs out there. So I wanted to share you my experiences with homeless shelters. Hopefully that gives you a better insight of homeless shelters and how they worked. If you have any questions about a homeless shelter, drop it in the comment section below. I'll answer it. No big deal. It's been 25 years since I've been in a homeless shelter. I got myself off the streets, and that was it. So, drop me a comment in the comment section below. If you like the video, it gives me a thumbs up. If you're new here, let your friends and family know. Hit that subscribe and that notification bell so you don't miss another video. Until next time, keep on walking.